Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are going to have to take scheduled leave if that had gone on any longer, you know. Thank you, Vanita, for those kind words. And she's right, I am the third longest serving Attorney General, and I'm closing in on number 2 the way things are going here. I want to thank you all for being here. It's a privilege to welcome such a distinguished crowd to the Great Hall for the important observance and on what will be my last opportunity to share it with you as Attorney General. It is a pleasure, as always, to join so many valued colleagues and good friends in paying tribute to the enduring legacy of an extraordinary leader, in celebrating the contributions of a singular figure in our nation's history, and in honoring the memory of a lifelong champion for equality, for peace, and for justice, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Now, I'm glad to share the stage this morning with Dorothy Williams, Richard Toscano, Thomas Wright, of course, our Assistant Attorney General, Gupta, and I'd also like to welcome the newest member of our team, the Deputy Attorney General. She's gone from the Deep South to the Upper South, Sally Yates. I'd also like to thank every member of the Junior ROTC Color Guard for opening today's ceremony. I went out with a woman who went to McKinley Tech, but that's another story. Cut that out so in case my wife sees this, I don't want to. I also want to extend a truly heartfelt special welcome to civil rights leader Dory Ann Ladner, who we are honored to have with us today. Ma'am, but for you, I would not be the Attorney General of the United States. Barack Obama would not be President of the United States. Thank you. And I particularly want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this annual event on what should have been today, Dr. King's 86th birthday, as we join millions of our fellow citizens throughout the country in remembering the man who helped to lead a really sweeping movement that forever changed the face of America and inspired people around the world to reach for opportunity and to reach for inclusion. The remarkable and enduring achievements of the civil rights era in tearing down segregationist policies, expanding access to the ballot box, and enshrining key protections into law did nothing less than alter the course of history. The impact of the movement has been transformative, and its power impossible to measure over the last 5 decades. Yet, as we've been reminded all too clearly in recent months, despite this once unimaginable progress, there's no denying, as we gather for this important commemoration, that a great deal of work remains to be done. Even today, in 2015, our journey is not yet complete. Economic progress remains uneven. Educational opportunity is still not uniform. And with due respect to the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, the right to vote is under siege. And we continue to live in a world that's too often divided, a world riven by misunderstanding and despair, a world beset by momentous challenges that are old and that are new, and a world badly in need of the compassion, the inclusion, and the healing that Dr. King stood for and worked toward throughout his too short 39 years. Now, especially in this time of trial, it is not only fitting, it is essential that we rededicate ourselves to the vision and the values that guided Dr. King at every stage of his career. Today, just as they did 50 years ago, these values point us away from tired rhetoric and stale talking points. They move us toward open dialogue and constructive engagement. They impel us to remember the common humanity that Dr. King found in every person that he met, in police officers as well as in protesters, in prisoners as well as in presidents. And they call us to the service of our fellow citizens, the betterment of our nation, and the protection of all that is exceptional about the country that we love. After all, as Dr. King once said, Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Now, I am mindful as we come together this morning that there are few who answer this call to greatness more heroically, and fewer who make more contributions and sacrifices in the name of public service than those who stand on the front lines of our fight for public safety, America's brave men and women in law enforcement. Now, as the brother of a retired police officer, I know in a very personal way that these courageous individuals perform their difficult and dangerous jobs with really extraordinary valor, compassion, and honor. They serve as steadfast guardians of our rights and our liberties, shouldering tremendous and often unheralded burdens. They incur significant risks in order to keep the rest of us safe, and they are routinely called upon to make split-second decisions to protect themselves and those around them. In short, they are true American heroes whose patriotism, integrity, and commitment to the highest standards of excellence are simply beyond question. I know this, and I have been troubled and deeply disturbed by recent mischaracterizations of this administration's regard for those who wear the badge. Over the past 6 years, our record of support for law enforcement has been both strong and unambiguous. This Justice Department, under my leadership, has taken significant and in some cases unprecedented steps to protect and to empower our local, state, tribal, and federal law enforcement colleagues. This is simple fact. In 2011, I created an officer safety working group in response to concerns about officer-directed violence. Through groundbreaking initiatives like Valor, the Department of Justice is providing cutting-edge training to help prevent violence against law enforcement, to improve officer resilience, and to increase survivability during violent encounters. Now, we're currently funding through analysis of our 2014 officer fatalities, including ambushes and other incidents, so that we can mitigate risks going forward. Under our Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program, we're helping to provide life-saving equipment to those who serve on the front lines. And through programs like the Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, we're offering our strongest support to brave officers and their loved ones during the toughest of times. Now, as someone who knows firsthand the pride of seeing a family member in uniform and the anguish that comes with knowing a loved one is in harm's way out patrolling the street, my personal support for those who serve has been steadfast throughout my career. I believe that every law enforcement officer is deserving not merely of our utmost respect, but our deepest gratitude. And that's why last month's devastating and barbaric attack, which claimed the lives of two of New York's finest, Officers Liu and Ramos, was so shocking and so deplorable. Now, these senseless murders were assaults on all of us, on our nation, on the rule of law, and on everyone who stands for justice. They serve as tragic reminders of the dangers that all of our police officers regularly face. And they have lent new urgency to our ongoing national conversation about the need to reduce crime, while at the same time building public trust wherever it has been eroded. This afternoon, I'm going to be traveling to Philadelphia to convene the latest in a series of roundtable discussions with law enforcement leaders, elected officials, community members, young people, and civil rights advocates in order to keep advancing this dialogue. Now, over the course of my travels throughout the country, I've had the chance to discuss these critical issues with Americans of all ages, backgrounds, races, ethnicities, and walks of life, from Atlanta to Cleveland, from Memphis to Chicago. I've heard from police officers, from protesters, faith leaders, and concerned citizens. On many occasions, I've been deeply moved by the stories and perspectives that I've heard from parents hoping to secure brighter and safer futures for their children, from passionate young people becoming engaged in our national debate, from police officers valiantly putting their lives on the line to make our neighborhoods just a bit safer. Now, through all of these interactions, I've really been struck not by the differences that have emerged, but by the remarkable commonalities, by the desire for peace, for safety, and for justice that drives everyone who's engaged in this discussion, and by the shared vision of a better tomorrow and a more secure and inclusive future that unites all Americans. Now, let me be very clear. None of these goals are in tension. None of our aims are in conflict. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to protect both the safety of our police officers and the rights and well-being of all of our citizens. We can and we must examine new ways to do both. Now, the first step to achieving this is to obtain better, more accurate data on the scope of the challenges that we faced. Now, for instance, I've heard from a number of people who have called on policymakers to ensure better record keeping on injuries and deaths that occur at the hands of police. I've also spoken with law enforcement leaders, including the leadership of the Fraternal Order of Police, who have urged elected officials to consider strategies for collecting better data on officer fatalities. Well, today, my response to these legitimate concerns is simple. We need to do both. This would represent a common sense step that would begin to address serious concerns about police officer safety as well as the need to safeguard civil liberties. The troubling reality is that we lack the ability right now to comprehensively track the number of incidents of either uses of force directed at police officers or uses of force by police. There has been some effort to address this in the past. In the 1990s, for example, Congress enacted legislation intended to help the Justice Department collect data on officer-involved shootings. But since the reporting remains optional and perhaps lacks sufficient incentives, many localities do not provide this data. Likewise, absent a requirement for reporting of injuries and deaths of police officers, many localities fail to report these statistics as well. Now, this strikes many, including me, as unacceptable. Fixing this is an idea that we should all be able to unite behind. Now, on a more fundamental level, our shared objectives also require that we work together to confront the mistrust that exists in some places between law enforcement officers and the communities that they serve. This is why President Obama and I have announced a variety of proposals that will enable us to bridge those divides wherever they are uncovered, from a national initiative for building community trust and justice to new funding for body-worn cameras. In recent weeks, I've also announced improvements to racial profiling guidance that applies to all federal law enforcement agents conducting law enforcement activities. And the President has taken the historic step of convening a new task force on 21st century policing, which held its first hearing just 2 days ago, in which, under the leadership of Philadelphia Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey, former Assistant Attorney General Lori Robinson, and other law enforcement leaders and experts will provide strong national direction to the profession as a whole, on a scale not seen since the Johnson administration. Now, I want to emphasize that these reforms are not aimed at individual officers themselves, who perform their jobs with distinction each and every day. Rather, they are intended to strengthen the criminal justice system as a whole, as well as the policies and procedures that shape this system and govern the way that it functions. This will improve public confidence, allowing law enforcement to operate with maximum safety, effectiveness, fairness, and legitimacy in every case and in every circumstance. And it will help to ensure that our present dialogue can be translated into positive, meaningful action. We owe it to our brave law enforcement officers, to peaceful demonstrators, and especially to our youngest citizens, to talk forthrightly about the issues that we face, no matter how difficult or complex they may be. We owe it to ourselves and our nation to seek areas of consensus rather than to exploit old divisions and to reopen old wounds. Most of all, we owe it to those who, throughout history, have fought and sacrificed and given their lives to bring our country to this moment, from Dr. King and the pioneers of the civil rights era, as well as to officers Ramos and Liu and the colleagues who carry on their work, to lay aside meaningless grievances, to reject political posturing from those who only demonstrate their interest in front of television cameras, and to do everything in our power to confront the challenges of our time and find a way to move forward together. During my visit to Memphis last month, I had the opportunity to tour the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel. Each and every one of you should go there. This is where Dr. King's room is preserved, just as it was on April the 4th, 1968, the night that he was taken from us by the very same forces of intolerance against which he had stood throughout his life. I could not help but think as I stood on that motel balcony about this great leader's unshakable belief that promoting love and condemning all forms of violence is the only way to cut off the chain of hate. I thought as well of the words of my predecessor as Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, who spoke about Dr. King's legacy in what he called the mindless menace of violence, just one day after Dr. King's untimely murder. In that emotional speech, then Senator Kennedy urged a grieving nation to remember, and I quote, that the victims of violence are black and white, rich and poor, young and old, famous and unknown. And he reminded us that no matter where they came from or who they were in life, all of these victims were human beings whom other human beings loved and needed. Well, as we gather today in the shadow of recent acts of senseless violence, I cannot help but reflect on the lives that have been lost over the past few months in communities where tragic deaths have exposed rifts between citizens and law enforcement. In New York City, where 2 brave police officers were murdered because of the uniforms that they wore. And in Paris, where heinous and cowardly acts of terror shocked the world and targeted the freedoms that we all hold so dear. Unfortunately, none of this is new to us. Senseless violence has coursed through the veins of this world for ages. And we have seen throughout history that acts of hatred breed only hatred. We understand that words of division only deepen division. And we know that our most serious and systemic challenges continue to demand the very best of us, just as they did in Dr. King's time. So today, once again, let us not shy away from, but embrace the noisy discord of honest, frank, and vigorous debate. Never forget, this great nation was born of protest by residents of this land who took to the streets to demand fairness from those who governed them. Let us never fail to support those who wear the badge, or to work alongside them in building a constructive dialogue, a dialogue founded on our common humanity. Let us act on the crucial recognition that those who serve with honor serve greatly, and they deserve our deepest respect. And let us reject the empty rhetoric of anyone who would engage in cynical attempts to divide and to cast blame, choosing instead to affirm once more that Americans from all backgrounds and perspectives must come together to be part of positive change. In this great nation, a nation of laws and of high ideals, we have always had the power to forge our own future. Dr. King's example offers inspiring proof of this fact. And that's why, as our present work unfolds, so long as we continue to rely on the engagement of our citizens, the ongoing commitment of our police officers, and the singular expertise and experience of leaders like you, I believe that there is good reason for confidence in where this effort will take us. So I want to thank you all once again for your dedication to this work. Wherever I am and whatever I am doing, I will always be proud to count you all as colleagues and partners in the work of making better the nation that we all love. I want to thank you all for all that you have done for me for these past 6 years and for all that you will do for our nation in the years ahead. Thank you.